Have you ever noticed how sometimes the loudest lessons in life come from the quietest people? I'm talking about the ones who don't yell, don't lecture, and sometimes don't even answer when you ask the simplest question. Yeah, I'm talking about my grandmother. I still remember this one afternoon, me, impatient, tapping my foot like a drum solo, asking her the millionth, why, question about life, and she just sat there. Silence. Not even a blink. Nothing. I swear, at one point, I thought she might have turned into a statue. And honestly, I almost panicked. I thought maybe I had finally broken the universe with my questions. But then something weird happened. That silence, yes, her silence, started to speak. And it said more than any advice-filled lecture ever could. Tell me if this ever happened to you. You're desperately seeking an answer, and someone just doesn't say a word, but somehow makes you understand everything. Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me that day, and it changed the way I saw life, decisions, and even failures forever. So, picture this, I'm a kid, technically still a nobody, but a very loud and slightly annoying one, and my grandmother is sitting in her favorite chair, knitting something that looks suspiciously like it could become a scarf or a small hammock for squirrels. I had just failed miserably at making a sandwich. Don't ask me how. Apparently putting peanut butter on the outside of the bread is not a culinary innovation. And I'm looking at her, expecting the usual lecture about responsibility, patience, or whatever. But she just stared. Silence. Like she was plotting something or maybe judging me. Honestly, I wasn't sure which. I tried to explain my tragic failure with full dramatic flair. I even threw in a few tears for effect, and still nothing. Not a word. So naturally, I panicked. I started asking more questions. Grandma, why do I mess everything up? Why can't I do anything right? Am I cursed? I know you felt this too, standing there, spilling your heart out, and the person you expect to respond doesn't. That panic! That awkward tension! Then she did something strange. She put down her knitting, looked at me with those eyes that somehow see straight through your excuses, and slowly, deliberately, she smiled. Just a tiny, knowing smile. And I swear, that smile said more than 1,000 motivational quotes. It was like she was saying, "You'll figure it out. Don't worry. Stop crying like you're auditioning for a soap opera." Now here's where it gets funny. In my desperation to get a lecture, I stomped around, muttering things like, "I'll never be good at anything." And then, boom! I tripped over my own shoelace, fell on my face, and she just chuckled. A soft, almost silent chuckle that made me feel both ridiculous and, okay, strangely motivated. Tell me if this ever happened to you. Someone laughs at your chaos, and instead of making you feel small, it makes you feel like maybe, just maybe, you're going to survive it. That's exactly what happened. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing her little gestures. How she'd leave me to figure out small problems on my own. How she'd watch quietly, letting me make mistakes but always being there, like an invisible safety net. And each time I messed up, instead of scolding, she'd just smile, or nod, or sometimes just shrug. And slowly, I realized that her silence wasn't empty. It was teaching me patience, resilience, and a weird kind of courage that comes from realizing nobody's perfect. Mistakes are hilarious, and somehow, you'll survive. By the time I left her house that day, I was still a clumsy, disaster-prone kid. But I had learned something huge. I had learned that sometimes, silence is louder than advice, and sometimes, the loudest lessons come without a single word. Looking back now, I realized that day with my grandmother taught me more than any classroom ever could. And I'm not talking about how to not burn sandwiches or avoid shoelace disasters. Although trust me, those skills are underrated. No, I'm talking about life lessons that sneak up on you when you least expect it. Lessons about patience, about resilience, and about understanding that sometimes you don't need someone to spell it out for you. Sometimes life whispers, and if you're listening closely, you'll hear everything. Here's the first lesson: silence can be a teacher. Weird, right? I used to think if someone wasn't talking, they didn't care, or worse, they were judging me. But no. Silence can make you stop, think, and reflect. It forces you to confront your own chaos. It makes you uncomfortable, and that discomfort, that's growth knocking at your door. Tell me if you've ever felt that awkward stomach twisting kind of silence that makes you realize, yeah, I really have to figure this out myself. That's the moment change starts. Second lesson: mistakes are hilarious and necessary. I know, we all hate failing. But let's be honest, some of the funniest stories in our lives come from epic failures. Like my face plant over the shoelace, or that time I tried to impress someone and completely flopped. Here's the thing: my grandmother didn't laugh at me to humiliate me. She laughed to remind me that life is messy, unpredictable, and yes, sometimes ridiculous. And if you can learn to laugh at yourself, you'll survive anything. Seriously, if you haven't laughed at your own chaos lately, go ahead, try it. Right now, I'll wait. Third lesson: patience isn't boring, it's powerful. I used to be so impatient, wanting instant answers, instant results, instant success. My grandmother's silence taught me that real growth doesn't come from rushing. It comes from observing, trying, failing, and trying again. She gave me the space to figure things out, to stumble, and to pick myself up. That's a gift we often overlook. Learning through doing, not being told what to do. And here's the kicker: if you're patient with yourself, life becomes less stressful. And honestly, a little funnier too. Fourth lesson: presence matters more than words. How many times have we sought advice, guidance, or validation, only to realize what we really needed was someone simply there? My grandmother didn't have to lecture me to make an impact. Her presence, quiet, calm, unwavering, gave me confidence I didn't know I had. And that's something you can carry forward. Sometimes, just being present, whether for yourself or someone else, is the most powerful thing you can do. And here's a bonus lesson, because who doesn't like a bonus? Humor is a survival tool. Life is hard. Mistakes hurt. Failures sting. But humor softens the blows. It turns embarrassing moments into memories, challenges into stories, and struggles into lessons. And my grandmother, with her silent chuckles, taught me that if you can laugh at yourself, you'll never truly fail. At least, not in the way that matters. So if you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or like you're failing at everything, take a deep breath. Remember the silent teachers in your life. The people who didn't shout advice, but whose presence, patience, and quiet confidence shaped you anyway. The mistakes, the mess, ups, the face plants, they're all part of the story. And sometimes, the most important lessons don't come from lectures, speeches, or motivational quotes. They come from watching, observing, and figuring things out for yourself, while someone quietly watches over you, smiling. Now, I know you're probably thinking, nobody. This sounds nice, but I don't have a grandmother like yours. And that's okay. The lesson doesn't need to come from a grandmother. It can come from a mentor, a friend, a parent, or even life itself. Silence, patience, humor, they're all available to you if you pay attention. And I promise, once you do, you'll start noticing the subtle messages hidden in the chaos of everyday life. You'll start laughing at your mistakes, You'll start learning without even realizing it. And slowly, you'll become the person you didn't know you could be. So, if you take one thing from my story today, let it be this: sometimes the loudest lessons come in silence. Sometimes the hardest laughs teach the deepest truths. And sometimes the small, unnoticed moments, like a grandmother's quiet smile, can change everything. So here's the thing: life isn't always going to hand you answers on a silver platter. Sometimes it's going to hand you silence, mistakes, and moments that make you want to stomp your feet and give up. But if you pay attention, those are the moments that shape you. My grandmother's silence taught me that patience, humor, and presence matter more than any lecture. It taught me to embrace mistakes, to laugh at chaos, and to trust that, even when I feel like a nobody, I'm learning something important every single day. And here's a little secret: success, growth, confidence, whatever you want to call it, it's rarely loud. It's rarely flashy. Most of the time, it's quiet. It's in the small victories, the lessons learned in silence, the moments you thought no one was watching. That's where the real magic happens. So, next time life gives you a quiet teacher, a failed attempt, or a messy disaster, don't panic. Take a breath, smile, and pay attention. Because that's when the real lessons are happening. That's when you're growing in ways you can't even see yet. And if you're nobody like me, stumbling, failing, learning, and figuring life out one step at a time, subscribe so we rise together. Share your stories of quiet lessons, mistakes, or unexpected laughter in the comments. I want to hear them. Because if my grandmother's silence taught me anything, it's that even the smallest moments, the quietest gestures, can change everything. Remember, the loudest lessons are sometimes the ones you can't hear. But you can always feel. And when you feel them, that's when life really begins.